everybody, it's Frankie-Lou. I'm coming to you today from the four-season greenhouse in the sky, where I'm quite excited because I have just set up another series of squash growing experiments. Now, we've had a lot of success with growing squash here in the greenhouse in the sky. In fact, last year, if you watched our spaghetti squash battle, we managed to get over 120 pounds of produce from just 2 plants. So things have been going well, but there's always room for improvement. Over the winter last year, we did manage to keep things growing in here, and we were harvesting greens and flowers and stuff in here for the year round. But this year, we're going to try to do some stuff. We've made a few tweaks to the system, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to maintain some of our heat-loving plants like squash further into the season. Okay, that's our goal, is to see how long we can keep some of these heat-loving crops growing. As you can see, our tomatoes are doing phenomenally this year. I am recording the weight of the fruit that I'm harvesting off of that, so we'll be able to share that with you soon once that season ends up. But let me explain my crazy little experiment that I've got going on here for squash. It is the last couple of weeks of August here. We're nearing the end of August, so most people would say it was crazy to start growing squash here. But as we've been able to maintain temperatures in here throughout the winter that were nowhere near freezing, and we're hoping with the tweaks we can get that going even longer, we're going to give it a try. Why not? Right? So what I've done here is I've pulled together a whole bunch of different ideas and things to see if we can get the best germination rate possible and also grow as intensively as possible. Now, those of you who follow me know I'm a huge fan of the milk jug method. So here I'm using some of the ideas from that, as well as some ideas that have been shared with me from a phenomenal local grower here of squash in Golden. And we've had a couple chats, and I'm going to try this. Okay, this is sort of a blend of some of our ideas together, that's why we do this, isn't it? So that we can try new things. And I will share and let you know if it fails or if it doesn't. I have a feeling this is going to work. Okay, so this is what we've done. This whole bed here is a squash bed that I just planted up, and I'm doing this video now before I water so you can see what it is I've done. I just harvested this bed a couple of days ago, and I've refilled it. It is amazing, I will say, how much new soil I have to add when we break down one of these beds, because they are so intensively productive. I think I had to add about 40 buckets of dirt in here, and so the soil that I'm using and the soil that I've added into here is a very rich mixture of a compost and our local soil, and we've been using it, and as you can see, it's an extremely productive soil. We also practice companion planting, so there weren't squash in here. Okay, what I've done is I've got a 6-bed rotation schedule, which I will share with you in another video, but right now it's this bed's turn for some squash. So I have got, underneath each of these domes here, I have got squash or cucumbers. I'm interplanting those. They do fine together. And in the middle row, I have got planted up a whole bunch of beautiful sunflowers. Helps to bring the pollinators in. The other thing I'm trying to do here is I want to sustain my beneficial insect populations through the winter the way we were able to do last year. Last year we had hoverflies and ladybugs living in here throughout the season. We will have to seal this up as winter comes along, but we did have in this growing space throughout the winter, I still was able to host those beneficial insects. So a lot of the plants that I've planted in here are aimed towards doing that. Okay, and I'll share what some of those are here. What we've done here is this bed, as I said, is filled with a beautiful mixture of our mountain loam, which is rocky and clayey, but it's super high in minerals. I've been really impressed with the richness of the soil here. And then we've added a nice healthy bunch of compost just to make it that much more productive. Then I have noticed over the years that when growing squash, it germinates best in a light soil, like Pro Mix growing. And that's what I use in all of my milk jugs and in all of my water bottles when I'm doing winter sowing in place. I've always used the Pro Mix Organic Herb and Veggie Blend. The problem is whenever I go to transplant, there's always this shock period where the plants don't appreciate being moved, especially squash. They don't like it so much. I've filled this up with the rich soil, but underneath each of these little domes here, and I'll bring the camera down in a minute so you can see, I've put one of these full of my organic herb and veggie. Here. Is it better here? Okay, you can probably see. I'll zoom in here so you can see. You notice how the soil is different? That's because I've taken one of these full of organic herb and veggie blend, and I put it nicely on top. I made a little hill of it, which is what you're supposed to do with squash anyways. And I've then put this dome on top. In each of these domes is planted either a cucumber or a squash variety and a couple of purple mist peas. Okay, so the nitrogen fixing peas and a squash or a cucumber in the middle of the sunflowers, and I've also got beans. Okay, so that is what's going on under each of these domes. And as you can see, that's a whole lot of domes. I know, it might seem crazy. This is nuts. Why are you trying to, they should be 3 or 4 feet apart. Under normal circumstances, yes. But one of the other major learnings that we've had here in the greenhouse in the sky is vertical is best. It's kind of important how you do that vertical growth. The squash plants and the bean plants have tendrils that are intended to climb upward. And by doing that, what we're doing is we're allowing for more pruning, because you do want to take away, when powdery mildew shows up, you want to get a couple of those leaves off right away. You want to allow for good airflow, and it also helps the beneficial insects to find the fruit. If your flowers are lying on the ground underneath a whole bunch of leaves, it's going to be more difficult for the pollinators to find them. Most pollinators are flying around this area, so they like it if you bring the flowers up for them. Now in March, I also did plant up a squash bed, which has been pulled down, and we've already harvested off of that, and it did okay. For that vertical growth, I just used bamboo stakes to get it up to these. But I found I had to do so much tying on because the tendrils don't tend to like these larger pulls. Whereas last year with our spaghetti squash battle, we used this for our vertical growth. And there's actually still a few tendrils attached to this from when we were growing. So what I'm going to do this year is, once these guys have started to germinate and once they're growing on, I'm going to remove the domes, and we're going to place this so that it wraps up and around and secured, and these guys will be able to climb up, and eventually they will go right to the rafters. We know that, we've seen that, and we're confident that we can make that happen again. So I guess your next question is, why the domes? What are you doing? Okay, so with the milk jug planting, I have definitely found that the trapped humidity of these domes, of something on top to sort of trap that moisture, is super beneficial for germination. I've done tons of tests with this, and my germination rates first of a entrapped space, like a dome, a milk jug, or a water cooler, the germination rates are much faster, and I just want to get these going along as quickly as I possibly can. So this is what these domes are for, is to help I found that some of my winter squash this year took a lot of time to germinate, and by the time that they did germinate, they didn't have an opportunity to thrive before their companion plants did. So what I'm doing now is, by setting this up like this, I'm hoping that I can get a better germination rate with each of these squash and cucumbers. I put 2 seeds under each of these domes, and I'm going to be heartless, and I'm going to prune off the one that isn't growing as effectively so that I have hopefully 31 strong plants. Yes, I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I've got going with those tomatoes there, and it certainly hasn't harmed the tomatoes to be grown that intensively, because we've got good, rich, deep beds here. As you can see, we're definitely using vertical growth with those tomatoes, and I'm pulling pounds and pounds and pounds of tomatoes off there every single day. So I'm hoping that between having the light soil of the Pro Mix organic herb and veggie and the dome with the trapped humidity and the companion plants, that's another thing that I do here. I do companion planting in all of my beds for multiple reasons: to ward off pests, to bring in pollinators. Some plants tend to taste better if they've been grown also with other plants. So the companion plants that I'm using for my squash and my cucumbers are fairly traditional. You've heard, I'm sure, of the Three Sisters methods where you grow beans, squash, and corn together. Sunflower is what people often call the fourth sister, and that's what I'm growing here because I already have 2 other beds that are growing corn right now. I want sunflower seeds because I use them for winters, for sprouting in the winter. I grow a lot of microgreens and sprouts from sunflowers, and my chickens appreciate them too. So I do want to get a nice sunflower crop growing here. So in the middle, we have beans and sunflowers. In each dome, we have peas and either squash or cucumber. And then around each of them, I just do sort of a haphazard sprinkle, see what's going to come up and what's going to do best. I've got nasturtiums. They're a wonderful cover crop. They act as a living mulch. They bring in pollinators, and I can also harvest the little seeds and create little nasturtium capers from that. Another thing that I do like to grow alongside is dill, because the umbral flowers from the dill do bring in lots of pollinators. And like I said, I'm trying to sustain that population through the winter. This will help with it. The other herb that I plant alongside these guys is chervil. It's a quick grower that's going to be coming up super fast. Also has the umbral flowers. It's delicious. Going to help my pollinators. In particular, it brings in the parasitic wasps and the hoverflies, and those 2 bugs are incredible for keeping away pests. All right. Then I've also grown I've also got in here 3 varieties of lettuce and radish. Radish is super important. I don't use radish the way most people do. What I do as a companion plant for my squash is this helps to keep away the squash bugs, particularly the white icicle. What I do is I allow them to grow on. I do not pull them when they're ready to eat as a root. I allow them to grow on. They'll grow up to here. There will be thousands of flowers, and those flowers help to repel the squash bug. Once again, bring in the pollinators, and then you can eat these lovely little radish pods. In fact, I got a couple here. I got one behind you here I can pull. This is a radish pod. This one has gone a little bit far in terms of eating, but I will save it as a seed. But when these are young and still like nice and green and don't have that brown on it at all, they're delicious. It's like eating a snap pea that tastes like a radish. So I grow tons and tons of this stuff. So this thing is going to look like a jungle, hopefully. I'll share with you the progress. I'm pretty happy with this little method here. I know these companion plants are ideal for these plants through many, 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 many years of experimenting, that this should do very, very well. When you're growing squash, I can't stress enough how important it is to have very, very sturdy vertical growing supports, because some of those fruits, like we pulled down some spaghetti squash last year that weighed pounds. And for instance, like you can imagine, this is one of the smaller Hubbard squash that I just harvested from the squash bed that I just pulled down. And that is hefty, right? So you don't want to have something flimsy. That'll fall apart. These are nicely secured into the beds with concrete pins. They're not going anywhere. And then once we attach this stuff onto it, we know from last year's experience that has been ideal for vertical growing. Okay, so I'm going to water this. I had to shoot this before I water, because once I water, it's going to be hard to see the difference between the old regular soil and the Pro Mix on top. But that's kind of, just as a recap, what we're doing here is an experiment. We're using what I'm calling a humidity dome. Of course, it's not going to trap all the humidity, but if you could see this right now even, I set this up a couple hours ago, and there's already humidity condensing on the inside of this even before I water. Okay, so I know that that's going to help with the germination rates. I've got the companion plants going on. I'm planting intensively. Like, honestly, most gardeners would tell you this is about 4 times the amount of plants that I should have in this space. But I know from my past experience in here that as long as I do the vertical growth and I keep up on my pruning, it should work well. And then the other thing is mixing the 2 soils to see if they go. And let's see what we can harvest. I will weigh everything that I'm pulling off of here, and I will share throughout the season how much produce we're getting out of this one bed. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that you might try some experiments yourself, because that's the best way to learn, I find, is to just keep playing in my little productive playground here and try new things. Please don't hesitate to ask questions if you have some, either about this companion plant combo or anything going on here in the greenhouse in the sky. I'll be doing another video in a couple weeks about all the different plant combos that we have in here and some of the tweaks we've made to help sustain this place growing well throughout the winter. And as always, I hope you'll take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.